They weren't monsters, they were dying. In the flickering candlelight of 18th century Europe, something far more terrifying than folklore was unfolding. While villagers whispered of undead creatures stalking the night, physicians confronted a medical nightmare that would blur the line between science and superstition forever. The afflicted retreated from daylight as if burned by holy fire. Their teeth gleamed crimson in the darkness. Their skin grew pale as burial shrouds, and their screams echoed through castle halls and peasant hovels alike. This was porphyria, and it spared no one. The curse that knew no class. The disease struck with the randomness of lightning and the persistence of a curse. In the gilded chambers of Versailles, King George III of England descended into madness. His urine turning the color of port wine, telltale sign physicians would only understand centuries later. In the drafty cottages of Romanian villages, farmers watched their children wither, unable to explain why sunlight itself had become their enemy. Porphyria attacked the body's ability to produce heme, the vital compound that carries oxygen in blood. Without it, toxic porphyrins accumulated like poison in the veins, transforming victims into living cautionary tales. The symptoms read like a vampire's biography, penned by a vengeful god. First came the pain-searing, unrelenting agony that felt like molten iron coursing through every nerve. Victims writhed in their beds, begging for darkness, for anything to stop the torment. Then the sun became their executioner. Stepping into daylight triggered violent reactions. Skin blistered and burned, peeling away in grotesque sheets. Those afflicted learned quickly the night was their only sanctuary. But the transformation wasn't finished. Porphyrins deposited in the gums, staining teeth a deep, blood-red hue. When victims grimaced in pain or attempted a smile, neighbors recoiled in horror at the crimson fangs gleaming back at them. The skin grew translucent, chalk white, stretched tight over bones as the disease ravaged their bodies. Hair sprouted in unusual places, fingers contorted, lips and gums receded, making teeth appear longer, more pronounced, more monstrous. When crown met coffin, the royal courts of Europe became theaters of medical mystery. George III's episodes of madness, violent outbursts, confusion, and that damning purple urine baffled the finest physicians in the British Empire. They prescribed arsenic. They bled him, they locked him away. None knew they were witnessing porphyria's cruel dance with power. The disease whispered through bloodlines like a hereditary ghost. Intermarriage among European nobility, cousin, wedding cousin, dynasty, preserving dynasty, created the perfect genetic breeding ground. The same DNA that secured thrones also carried the mutated genes responsible for porphyria's horrors. Royal physicians documented strange symptoms in hushed tones, never connecting the constellation of suffering to a single cause. In the villages, the afflicted fared worse. Without the protection of palace walls, they became targets. A peasant child who screamed at sunlight, whose teeth appeared bloody, who grew gaunt and pale. This was evidence enough for terrified communities. The vampire legends that had simmered in folklore found seeming confirmation in flesh and blood. Imagine being that child. Imagine the confusion. Why does the sun hurt? Why do people stare? Why does mother weep when she sees your smile? The medical treatments of the 1700s were medieval nightmares. Bloodletting, the supreme irony, was prescribed to balance humors, weakening already fragile bodies. Mercury, arsenic, and opium dulled pain but hastened death. Some physicians, noting the skin's sun sensitivity, actually recommended complete darkness and nocturnal living, inadvertently reinforcing the vampire parallel. Garlic, that legendary vampire repellent, may have had accidental roots in reality. Certain porphyria triggers include sulfur compounds abundant in garlic. Victims who reacted poorly to garlic weren't supernatural. They were experiencing genuine symptom exacerbation. Folk wisdom and medical ignorance created a feedback loop, where treatment confirmed suspicion, confirmed legend. The breaking point, the true horror of porphyria, wasn't just physical, it was existential. Victims watched themselves transform into the very monsters their communities feared. The psychological torture was exquisite. You know you're human. You know you're dying. But everyone around you sees only the monster you're becoming. Some were buried alive. In an era before reliable death verification, victims experiencing porphyrious paralytic episodes might appear deceased. Imagine regaining consciousness in a coffin, scratching at the lid, only to reinforce every vampire tale ever told. Exhumations occasionally revealed corpses that had moved, that showed signs of struggle, not undead creatures, but porphyria victims who'd been declared dead prematurely. The disease destroyed families. Parents watched children suffer. Siblings inherited the same cursed DNA. No cure existed. No explanation satisfied. The afflicted became outcasts, sometimes killed by the very people who once loved them, sacrificed on the altar of fear, masquerading as protection. By the late 1700s, porphyria sufferers faced an impossible choice: hide and suffer in silence, or reveal themselves and risk everything. Many chose isolation, creating the template for countless Gothic tales: the figure in the abandoned castle, the hermit who emerges only at night, the aristocrat who refuses all visitors, the revelation. It wasn't until 1871 that Felix Hopsaler identified porphyrins. Even then, decades passed before physicians connected these compounds to the constellation of vampire-like symptoms. The truth emerged slowly, painfully. The monsters were victims. The curse was genetics. The supernatural was simply misunderstood suffering. The moral cuts deeper than any vampire's bite. Our need to explain the inexplicable often transforms victims into villains. Fear, ignorance, and superstition create monsters where none exist. The porphyria sufferers of 18th century Europe didn't need steak and garlic, they needed compassion and medicine. Today, porphyria remains rare but treatable. Modern medicine offers what 1700s physicians couldn't imagine: accurate diagnosis, symptom management, genetic counseling. But the lesson extends beyond one disease. How many monsters in our world are simply people suffering conditions we don't yet understand? How quickly do we jump from ignorance to fear to persecution? The vampire disease teaches us that our greatest horror isn't the unknown, it's our response to it. The next time you encounter something that frightens you, something that seems inexplicable, remember the pale faces and blood-red teeth of porphyria victims. Remember that understanding requires curiosity, not torches. Seek knowledge. Choose compassion. Question your monsters. Because sometimes, the only thing separating the afflicted from the feared is whether we're brave enough to look closer. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's support amazing and bizarre stories around the world.